Hey guys, Lord Naren White here, the Holy Ghost of the One True God, back with you with the next video in my series, reading The Adventures of Tom Sawyer by Mark Twain. Without further ado, returning to The Adventures of Tom Sawyer, as read by Lord Naren White. They built a fire against the side of a great log 20 or 30 steps within the somber depths of the forest, and then cooked some bacon in the frying pan for supper, and used up half of the corn pone stock they had brought. It seemed glorious sport to be feasting in that wild, free way in the virgin forest of an unexplored and uninhabited island, far from the haunts of men, and they said they never would return to civilization. The climbing fire lit up their faces, and threw its ruddy glare upon the pillared tree trunks of their forest temple, and upon the varnished foliage and festooning vines. When the last crisp slice of bacon was gone, and the last allowance of corn pone devoured, the boys stretched themselves out on the grass, filled with contentment. They could have found a cooler place, but they would not deny themselves such a romantic feature as the roasting campfire. "Ain't it gay?" said Joe. "It's nuts," said Tom. "What would the boys say if they could see us?" "Say? Well, they'd just die to be here. Hey, Hucky!" "I reckon so," said Huckleberry. "Anyways, I'm suited. I don't want nothing better than this. I don't ever get enough to eat, generally, and here they can't come and pick at a feller and bullyrag him so." "It's just the life for me," said Tom. "You don't have to get up mornings, and you don't have to go to school and wash and all that blamed foolishness. You see, a pirate don't have to do anything, Joe, when he's ashore. But he's a hermit. But a hermit, he has to be praying considerable, and then he don't have any fun anyway, all by himself that way." "Oh yes, that's so," said Joe, "but I hadn't thought much about it. You know, I'd a good deal rather be a pirate, now that I've tried it. You see," said Tom, "people don't go much on hermits nowadays, like they used to in old times. But a pirate's always respected. And a hermit's got to sleep on the hardest place he can find, and put sackcloth and ashes on his head, and stand out in the rain, and—" "What does he put sackcloth and ashes on his head for?" inquired Huck. "I don't know, but they've got to do it. Hermits always do. You'd have to do that if you was a hermit." "Derned if I would," said Huck. "Well, what would you do?" "I don't know, but I wouldn't do that." "Why, Huck? You'd have to. How did you get around it?" "Why, I just wouldn't stand it. I'd run away." "Run away? Well, you would be a nice old slouch of a hermit. You'd be a disgrace." The red-handed made no response, being better employed. He had finished gouging out a cob, and now he fitted a weed stem to it, loaded it with tobacco, and was pressing a coal to the charge and blowing a cloud of fragrant smoke. He was in the full bloom of luxurious contentment. The other pirates envied him this majestic vice, and secretly resolved to acquire it shortly. Presently Huck said, "What does your pirates have to do?" Tom said, "Oh, they just have a bully time, take ships and burn them, and get the money and bury it in awful places in their island, where there's ghosts and things to watch, and kill everybody in the ships, make 'em walk a plank." "And they carry the woman to the island," said Joe. "They don't kill the women." "No," assented Tom, "they don't kill the women. They're too noble, and the women's always beautiful too. And don't they wear the bulliest clothes? Oh no, all gold and silver and diamonds, said Joe with enthusiasm. Who? Said Huck. Why, the pirates. Huck scanned his own clothing forlornly. I reckon I ain't dressed fittin' for a pirate, said he, with a regretful pathos in his voice. But I ain't got none but these. But the other boys told him the fine clothes would come fast enough, after they should have begun their adventures. They made him understand that his poor rags would do to begin with, though it was customary for wealthy pirates to start with a proper wardrobe. Gradually, their talk died out, and drowsiness began to steal upon the eyelids of the little waifs. The pipe dropped from the fingers of the red-handed, and he slept the sleep of the conscience-free and the wary. The terror of the seas and the black avenger of the Spanish Main had more difficulty in getting to sleep. They said their prayers inwardly, and lying down, since there was nobody there with authority to make them kneel and recite aloud, in truth they had a mind not to say them at all. But they were afraid to proceed at such lengths as that, lest they might call down a sudden and special thunderbolt from heaven. Then at once they reached and hovered upon the imminent verge of sleep. But an intruder came now that would not down. It was conscience. They began to feel a vague fear that they had been doing wrong to run away. And next, they thought of the stolen meat, and then the real torture came. They tried to argue it away by reminding conscience that they had purloined sweet meats and apples scores of times. But conscience was not to be appeased by such thin plausibility. It seemed to them, in the end, that there was no getting around the stubborn fact that taking sweet meats was only hooking, while taking bacon and hams and such valuables was plain simple stealing. And there was a command against that in the Bible. So they inwardly resolved that so long as they remained in the business, their piracy should not again be sullied with the crime of stealing. Then conscience granted a truce, and these curiously inconsistent pirates fell peacefully to sleep. Chapter 14. When Tom awoke in the morning, he wondered where he was. He sat up and rubbed his eyes and looked around. Then he comprehended. It was the cool gray dawn, and there was a delicious sense of repose and peace in the deep, pervading calm and silence of the woods. Not a leaf stirred, not a sound obtruded upon great nature's meditation. Beaded dewdrops stood upon the leaves and grasses. A white layer of ashes covered the fire, and a thin blue breath of smoke rose straight into the air. Joe and Huck still slept. Now, far away in the woods, a bird called. Another answered presently. The hammering of a woodpecker was heard. Gradually, the cool dim gray of the morning widened, and as gradually sounds multiplied and life manifested itself, the marvel of nature, shaking off sleep and going to work, unfolded itself to the musing boy. A little green worm came crawling over a dewy leaf, lifting 2/3 of his body into the air, from time to time, and sniffing around, then proceeding again, for he was measuring. Tom said, and when the worm approached him, of its own accord, he sat as still as a stone, with his hopes rising and falling, by turns, as the creature still came toward him, or seemed inclined to go elsewhere. And when at last it considered a painful moment with its curved body in the air, and then came decisively down upon Tom's leg, and began a journey over him, his whole heart was glad, for that meant that he was going to have a new suit of clothes, without the shadow of a doubt of a gaudy piratical uniform. We'll go ahead and stop there for this week. As usual, I want to say thank you for watching, and I hope you enjoyed. Please like, comment, and subscribe, as it greatly helps the channel. Like to be with you all. Take care, and thanks again.